The storm outside had no mercy that night, and neither did life on her fragile heart. Emma stood under the flickering street lamp, clutching a worn-out umbrella, her shoes soaked through from puddles she couldn't avoid. She was only 23, but the weight on her shoulders felt like she carried decades of struggle. After her mother's sudden passing and her father abandoning her when she was just a child, Emma's life had become a constant tug-of-war between survival and hope. Yet despite the endless nights of hunger, the rejection slips from job interviews, and the cruel indifference of strangers, her soul held on to one unshakable belief: kindness mattered, and it could change lives. But what she didn't know that night was that her own words, spoken aloud to no one, would soon pierce through the silence of a man who hadn't spoken in years, a man whose wealth could buy anything, but whose heart was locked in chains. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to MJ Kindness Moments. Together, we can keep spreading these stories of hope. Emma's evenings were always the hardest. By day she worked double shifts at a cafe, smiling at strangers while serving them coffee she could barely afford herself. But by night, when she returned to the tiny rented room she could barely call home, silence wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She often spoke into that silence, sometimes to her late mother, sometimes to God, sometimes just to the emptiness in her chest. She didn't know anyone was listening. She thought her words vanished into thin air, dissolving like steam in the cold night. But one man, hidden behind the tall iron gates of a mansion she walked past every evening, heard every single word. The mansion belonged to Adrian, a millionaire whose name once filled newspapers. He had built an empire in technology, a man praised for brilliance and feared for ruthlessness. But all of that collapsed one night in a single tragic accident, a car crash that killed his wife and young daughter. Adrian survived, but the trauma stole his voice. Doctors said it wasn't physical, but psychological. The grief had locked him into silence, and in the 5 years that followed, he never spoke again. Wealth surrounded him, cars, chandeliers, rare art, but he lived like a ghost haunting his own fortune. His mansion was not a home, but a prison of memories. And then came Emma. Every evening, exhausted from work, Emma would pause by the mansion gates, never realizing security cameras picked up her presence. She would whisper her pain into the night air, words spilling out as though confessing to a friend. "I don't know how much longer I can keep going," she once said, her voice trembling. "But I promised Mama I'd never give up. Even when it hurts. Even when no one sees me." Another time, she laughed bitterly through tears, saying, "Funny, isn't it? The world is so full of people, and yet you can feel more alone than if you were the last one alive." Adrian heard it all. Night after night, her words filled the silence he lived in, and for the first time in years, something stirred inside him. Her pain mirrored his, her loneliness echoed his, and her stubborn faith in kindness shook the walls he had built around his heart. One rainy evening, Emma's umbrella finally broke under the wind. She pressed herself against the gate to shield from the storm, whispering through clenched teeth, "Mama, if you can hear me, please send me a sign. I don't want to stop believing in goodness, but I'm so tired." Her voice cracked, her tears mixing with the rain. Behind the glass window of his study, Adrian pressed his trembling hands against the pane, his chest heaving with emotions he couldn't name. He wanted to step outside, wanted to tell her he heard her, wanted to comfort her, but silence had been his cage for so long that he didn't believe he could break it anymore. Days passed, then weeks. Emma's words became Adrian's lifeline. She never knew her audience, but unknowingly she was stitching together a broken man's will to feel again. He started leaving the lights on at the gate for her, a subtle gesture she didn't notice at first. Then one evening, when she whispered, "Sometimes I wonder if anyone out there hears me at all," he couldn't hold back. With shaking hands, he scribbled on a notepad and instructed his housekeeper to deliver it to her through the gate. The note was simple: "I hear you." Emma froze, the paper trembling in her wet hands, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Who had written this? How? And why did it feel like the universe had just whispered back? She returned the next evening, curiosity burning in her. She whispered again, asking, "Who are you?" And again, another note was slipped out to her, "Someone who understands." What began as a one-way outpour of her heart transformed into an unlikely connection. Each night, Emma spoke, and Adrian responded through handwritten notes. She told him about her struggles, her dreams of finishing school, her desire to someday open a shelter for children who felt abandoned like she once had. Adrian, though silent, revealed pieces of himself in ink, the loss of his family, the emptiness of wealth, the prison of silence. Emma's heart ached for him, yet she didn't know his name, only that he was a soul aching in the shadows. Then came the night that changed everything. Emma broke down completely, sinking to her knees by the gate. "I can't do it anymore," she whispered hoarsely. "Every door closes. Every day hurts. I don't know if hope is worth it anymore." Adrian's chest burned as if knives twisted inside. He scribbled desperately, but the words weren't enough. He looked at the note in his hand, "Don't give up. You are stronger than you know." And for the first time in 5 years, it felt inadequate. Something deep inside him roared, breaking chains that had silenced him for too long. Without realizing it, he rushed outside into the rain, falling to his knees before her, his voice raw and shaky as he shouted, "Don't you dare give up." Emma's head snapped up, eyes wide, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, time stopped. The millionaire trapped in silence had spoken, his voice breaking through years of grief, just to save a girl who didn't even know who he was. She gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands, unable to believe what she had just heard. He collapsed into sobs, the storm washing over them both. "I heard you," Adrian choked out. "Every night. You saved me without even knowing. Please, don't give up. Not when you've already saved someone like me." Emma's tears poured harder as she reached out, taking his shaking hands into hers. In that moment, two broken souls found in each other the strength to keep living. It wasn't about money, status, or past wounds, it was about the unexplainable connection between two hearts that refused to surrender to despair. The weeks that followed felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Adrian invited Emma inside, and she discovered the identity of the man she had unknowingly poured her soul to. But he wasn't the billionaire recluse the world whispered about, he was simply Adrian, a grieving man learning to heal. And Emma wasn't just a struggling waitress anymore, she became his reminder that life was worth living again. He funded her dream of studying, not out of charity, but out of faith in her heart. Together, they built not just a shelter for children, but a home filled with laughter, hope, and second chances. Their bond wasn't born from wealth or pity, but from the raw, fragile beauty of kindness shared in the darkest hours. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to MJ Kindness Moments. Your support helps us continue bringing real, moving stories of hope to light. Speech balloon special request: before you go, comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your voice matters here. And so, the millionaire once trapped in silence, and the girl once lost in despair, discovered that sometimes, healing begins when two broken voices finally dare to be heard. And in the end, they proved that kindness isn't just a small gesture, it's the power that can rewrite destinies.